Hello and welcome to a live episode of the Leveraging AI podcast, the podcast that shares practical, ethical ways to leverage AI to improve efficiency, grow your business, and advance your career. This is Isar Meitis, your host, and I cannot be more excited than I am right now for what we have for you. First of all, because we're doing this live and we have some amazing people in the audience. And second is because many business people, and especially business leaders, are currently aware of AI and AI tools and are considering what the hell to do, what's the right approach in order to address it in a way that will benefit the business and not leave the business behind. And some have even studying AI tools that have people in their business who started using different AI tools, but very few people in leadership positions today actually have a structured plan or a concept that they want to follow in order to lead their business into the AI era. And while I don't have a magic wand to make this happen or a crystal ball and exactly what's going to happen, I think we have today the next best thing, which is our guest today, with is Paul Roetzer. And Paul has founded the Marketing AI Institute back in 2016. In the past few months, there's been multiple overnight AI experts who are sharing the best 5 tools to do this or the 100 prompts to do that. Paul has been actually helping businesses figure out AI and how to move into an AI-driven era for 7 years. He's also the co-author of Marketing Artificial Intelligence, AI Marketing, and the Future of Business. So in my eyes and the eyes of many others, he's maybe one of the top global experts when it comes to understanding the impact of AI on businesses and probably society. And hence, I'm truly humbled and really excited to have Paul as a guest. In the next few years, AI technology will change our world dramatically. Whether you are a business executive trying to catapult your business forward, or just somebody who refuses to be left behind and want to advance your career, this is the show for you. I'm your host, Isar Meitis, a serial entrepreneur and an AI enthusiast. You'll hear invaluable practical tips from innovative business leaders, AI practitioners, and some of the brightest AI minds in our world today on how you can leverage AI in ethical ways to advance your career and grow your business. Paul, welcome to Leveraging AI.
I'm honored to be here. I love the conversation. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to spend time with you. You and I have connected online at least for a while and been trying to get this arranged for a little while. And so I'm excited to finally do it. And I think that there's just so much for everyone to learn. And there's so much opportunity to still be a first mover. And I think that's the big thing I always tell people is it can be overwhelming. It can be scary and uncertain, but everyone is experiencing the same thing. And very few people are taking the action yet. And so just being here today and listening to this podcast live or later on, you just know that you're not far behind. You have a chance here, and hopefully this conversation will help you move forward a little bit.
Yes, thank you. And I really want to encourage the people in the audience. We have people from all over, which is really cool. Paul, let's really begin with a high level view of the what. If I'm currently a CEO, I'm probably in one of 3 buckets. Bucket number 1, I don't even know this is coming. And I think there's probably a long list of people in that bucket. Bucket number 2, I started understanding that something's happening, but I still don't think it's going to be impactful for anything that I'm doing. And bucket number 3 is people who go, holy crap, this is going to change everything that I know, my clients, my business, my management, my everything. How do I prepare? I think, like I said in the intro, there's very few who actually know what to do. You've done this with multiple CEOs, either one-on-one or on stages. What are the things, kind of like a quick list of the things you recommend to CEOs and people in leadership positions to do in this situation?
Yeah, I think most people are definitely in buckets 1 and 2 that you outlined. And I think people quickly get to bucket 3 after they sit down and listen to a talk for 30 minutes, or really for the first time see it at work, see demonstrations of GPT-4, watch a 1.5-minute example of what Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to do, where it's going to infuse AI into the platform. And they quickly realize this isn't 2 years from now. Like this is tech that's going to be embedded into the tech stack they're already using. And they're going to have a bunch of people in their company with access to these tools who have no training on them. And that's when they realized that, wow, we really need to make moves quickly. So I know we'll unpack these, but I'll quickly go through the 5 things I've been guiding people on recently. The first is education and training. Everything in an organization starts with understanding. If you, as a leader and your team, do not understand AI, you're not going to be able to plan around it. So you have to start with education. I always advise to build an internal council, an AI council. It could be 2 people to start, or it could be 10 if you're a big organization and you want leaders from each function of the business to be a part of it. Same deal, get that council together, get a level set of understanding of AI to make sure everyone's coming from the same direction. And then that group is responsible for really start to figure out the playbook moving forward. The third thing is to make sure that the organization has responsible AI principles that guide decisions that are going to be made around AI, and generative AI policies that guide the use of image, language, video, audio generation technologies. The fourth is to do a AI impact or exposure assessment of your team. So once you understand what AI is capable of, you start looking out and saying, okay, we have writers, we have designers, we have engineers, we have social media people, advertising people. What is the impact going to be on them? What do their jobs look like 1 to 2 years from now as all these AI tools become available and infused into our business? How are their jobs going to change? How are they going to be impacted by AI? That'll enable you to start making some more strategic decisions around your staffing and professional development. And then the final thing is to build an actual AI roadmap. What does our company look like 3 years from now? Like a future state. What do we want to become? What does that look like? How does that change the daily workflows? How does it affect us in the competitive landscape? And that is a whole thing then. And that's an ongoing process. But those 5 steps really start to lay the foundation for your ability to evolve your business or to just build a smarter business from the ground up. And quick hello to our friend from Italy. I'm actually going to be in Italy in June doing a talk. And when breaking news, ChatGPT was just turned back on in Italy today. So I believe so. Relevant time to be talking about all this for our friend in Italy.
So, Paul, I think the points are right on, and I think they're fantastic. And you and I spoke about this before as well. The only point that I like to add, and I know it's infused to all your points, is the understanding of the human aspect in business is going to become even more important. So I always add that as another point when I talk to people is relationships with people within your organization, relationship with your clients and prospects is going to become even more critical because the day-to-day, the deliverables, a lot of stuff will be vanilla because everybody will be able to do it at a really good level with all these tools. But if I'm a CEO and I'm sitting here and listening to this podcast or watching us live or reading this on a blog post or whatever, I'm nodding, but I'm like, how do I actually do this? And really, that's what I want to do in the rest of our conversation is go one by one and talk about the how and not just the what. So let's really start with education and training.
Yep.
How do I make sure that me, myself, as the business leader, or the last person in the company that was hired yesterday, it doesn't matter. How do I make sure that I'm educated and that the people around me, leadership, senior leadership, middle leadership, everybody gets as educated as possible?
It probably starts with what your existing professional development education program internally looks like. If you're a big enough organization that you have a person or a team that are charged with that, they're obviously your starting point. So you're going to look for ways to infuse AI education into the existing curriculum and experiences you provide to your team. If you don't have that, then you start there. You need someone who can run point on developing a curriculum internally. And that can be a mix of internal and external stuff. So we would often say, like when I had a marketing agency, which I sold a couple of years ago, we had about an 18-person team at the end. And I had a VP of talent, and part of her job was to build the internal curriculum. And so we would do 3-month intensives where we would learn AI as a team for 3 months. And then we would do like inbound marketing and HubSpot for 3 months, and we would rotate. But we had a mix of recommended readings that we would do. We would get together and do book meetings about and talk about our takeaways. We would create our internal courses. So I would create courses, like online courses for our team. We would mix in external courses from like Coursera and places like that. So we would basically go out over 3 months and we would say, okay, here's what we need the team to learn to get to the point we want them to be at. My VP of talent would then design that curriculum, and then we would put it out into the system and say, okay, here's what we're doing over the next 3 months. And everyone was clear on it. They knew exactly what was going to happen. So that's, I think, the key is you have to have someone to lead on that process. If you don't have them, put someone in that position who can excel at it and is interested in it, and then make it fun for everyone. Again, involve them in, because the thing is, like, AI is scary to people. They don't know if they're losing their jobs. They have no idea what the plan is. So the more you involve people in this process, the quicker we can get past all the fear and get to the part that's fun about how this can make people's jobs better and enhance creativity and innovation. And just, you got to break through the barriers though first, and education is the way to do it.
I love two things that you said, and I want to touch on both of them. One is the fact that AI, especially with what's going on right now, is both exciting and terrifying at the same time. And the more you can push people to the exciting side, the more good results you're going to get. And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is, I think, the involvement part, meaning some people see as education, like, okay, go read this, and that's the education part of it. And you got to make this interactive. You got to make this a collaborative process. You got to invest time in this, meaning as a company, okay, let's get everybody together. If it's a small company, or within your different groups and teams, if it's a bigger company, and you give it an hour a week or an hour every other week, and you talk about these topics, and people give demonstrations of different tools or different concepts and so on. And that's how you make it, that's how you involve basically everybody. So both amazing points. This also leads, I think, into your next, which is developing a council. How do you pick the right people? What's the cast type of the people on the council?
It has to be diverse. That, to me, I don't know that there's any true blueprint yet for how to do this, but I think it's like any other major strategic initiative within an organization that touches all business functions. Now, there haven't been many of those. If you think about the true impact this can have across everything: marketing, sales, service, ops, HR, finance, legal, everybody is going to be affected. So I think that you start there, that, okay, this needs to be cross-discipline. We need voices in the organization from each of the core areas are going to be impacted. And then we want people who are excited about learning this, because putting someone in the room who just doesn't want anything to do with this does nothing for anyone. And so I think you build almost like I would probably start with like a mission statement. This is what this council's purpose is. And then I would maybe put that out and allow people to raise their hands. You obviously are going to want your leadership in, but I've had conversations in the last few days with some people in their early 20s who work at major companies, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, raise your hand. Walk into your boss's office and say, I think we need an AI council. I would love to be a part of it. If I was a CMO and someone came to me and I'm, as a CMO, worried, what do I do? And I have someone 3 years out of school who's saying, listen, I get this stuff. I love it. I want to be a part of solving this. Done. You're it. You're the first person on the council. Let's go find the other people. So to me, I think the people who are willing to go into the unknown, kind of embrace the uncertainty in front of us, but are motivated by that uncertainty and want to help solve this for the organization, those are the people I want on board. I want the people that are going to really bring energy to it and help us figure this out.
So I want to add something and then ask a tough question.
Yeah.
The something I want to add is, I think you're lucky if you have people like that from different aspects of the organization who, whether they stand up and raise their hand, or like, I know Joe or Jill or Amanda that really are techie and they're passionate about this kind of stuff. And even if they're not raise their hand and come up, if I come and offer them, they'll jump all over it. The tough question is, what do I do if I don't? What if either my organization is relatively small, or I have a big organization, but I really don't know who or how to find the people who are the right people? And I think the right people has two things. One is what you said, it's something they would love to do and enjoy and be passionate about. But the other, these people need to have the right clout and the right relationships in the organization, because later on they will need to be the ones that getting the buy-in from anybody else. So what do I do if I don't have these kind of people?
The CEO has to be at the top of the council. Like it's like anything else. If it's important to the CEO, it's important to everybody else, whether they want it to be or not. So as long as, and the CEO doesn't have to be sitting in every meeting, but as long as the CEO has made it clear to the organization that this is a top priority and that this council matters, they're going to be part of the future of this organization, then you're in the wrong company if you don't want to be on that council. I mean, that it's maybe an overly simplistic way to look at it, but if you don't have the CEO's support, then you have a bigger problem. So I think, again, the first thing comes down to you have to have the people at the top understand the urgency of solving for this in their organization. And you can achieve that pretty quickly. I'll walk into a meeting with CEOs and 30 minutes later, they're like, what do we do? So as long as you show them the right information, show them what's going to happen, and you talk through this, I think you can very quickly win the support you need to start figuring this stuff out.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I think Let's go to the next thing. I think we're all on
Mhm.
the same page of this. What does the council do? How frequently do you think they should meet? What topics do you think they should discuss? How do they evaluate the impact on their business in the most effective way?
In, I don't know, what month are we in? April. So about a month ago, I wrote something called the Law of Uneven AI Distribution. And the basic premise of this was that AI is not going to be evenly diffused across all professions and industries. What I mean by that is it basically comes down to your organization, your industry's understanding of artificial intelligence. Once they understand it, they have to have access to the technology to use it. So like in Italy, where they didn't have ChatGPT for the last 45 days, that what are you going to do? Like you can't learn the tech if you don't have access to it. And then the third piece of the law is acceptance of it, that we not only have access to it, we accept that it's going to be critical. We're willing to give up the data we need to use it. So all of these things factor in. So what I would say to the council is if you're in a software company, it is existential. Like you have now to figure this out. Anybody can come and take on your company almost seemingly overnight with new tech. So in the SaaS world, it's an immediate thing. In financial services, healthcare, insurance, manufacturing, it's going to be a little slower to diffuse into those organizations. Professional services, it's right now. So that's what I would say. Once you understand what this stuff is and what we're talking about, the impact it can have, you can start doing a little bit of a self-assessment saying, okay, this is very real for us in 2023. We really need to take action versus it's just going to take a while and we can take our time here and really get this right. I think in most organizations where there's a lot of knowledge workers, a lot of people who think for a living, it's probably coming faster than you expect. And so I would have a sense of urgency for the AI Council. I would rather you started and made some mistakes than wait 3 months to get the perfect plan for the AI Council. I would, even if it's a council of one and it's you, I would start it sooner than later.
So I agree. I think the sense of urgency really depends on how regulated or long change it takes to do in your industry. And I agree with you that service companies like professional services and tech are probably the most vulnerable right now. I had a very interesting conversation with the CEO of one of the top 10 largest legal law firms in the nation. And he is aware, but I don't think he's as aware as he should be, and the level of urgency. And the conversation was a very interesting conversation, obviously. But if we drill into what the council should do, like what should be the deliverables of that council, what would your recommendation be?
Yeah, I think at minimum, you're going to start with quarterly meetings. But I think in the early going, while you're trying to figure out the mission and scope of the council and the authority it has, that's going to be a key thing. Is this CEO is blessing this council and they have authority to go do this, and here's their budget and they're going to go. Well, then you're going to have much more urgency to your actions. You're going to get a project plan in place much quicker, and you're going to start doing stuff. Again, if it's a slower burn and you're just like, let's start something, let's have our first meeting and let's hopefully the CEO will show up and see the value of this, then it's going to take a little bit longer. But I think that I would look at it and probably say, you're going to do it the way you would do it any other major initiative. You're going to set some goals around it. Some priority goals are rocks. If you're an EOS person, have some rocks related to this thing. Okay, by the end of the first 3 months, we're going to have generative AI policies. We're going to have responsible AI principles in front of the CEO to review. And we're going to figure out how to prioritize use cases for the marketing and sales and service team. And we're going to start figuring out what the first big problem state we're going to solve is. That's what I would do. Is I would look at some very tangible things that you could measure against. And then if you need to meet weekly for that, or however you need to get those goals, like anything else, I would just start with what the goals are and what are the measurable milestones you're going to achieve. And that'll dictate the action plan and the timeline.
Yeah, I love that. I think you touched a little bit on finding the low-hanging fruits, right? If you can get some quick wins, such as let's find a tool that helps finance or that helps HR or that helps marketing, and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then in the next meeting, maybe in the company-wide meeting, you come and show this is what we achieved last week. Yeah. People will pay attention because you'll
do demo, win people over by showing them the stuff. To your point, if you find an amazing tool, like somebody asked about, aside from DALL-E, I put Runway ML, it will blow your mind. If you go watch your Gen 1 and Gen 2 videos, it's mind blowing stuff. bring people in on that, get them excited. Hey, we found this really cool tool. If we got 5 minutes in the all hands meeting next week, can I show this? That's the kind of stuff where other people are like, hey, I want to, can I get on that council? That stuff looks awesome. I want to do that too.
Yeah, I like that. I think doing some promotional internal marketing on cool stuff will get a lot of buy-in from people and results, because people are driven
real-time stuff.
by
Don't
one
wait
or the
3
other.
months to tell them what you did. Like, show stuff, like show progress.
So in the stuff you talked about, one of the deliverables being the responsible AI principles and policies. Talk to me about that. What does that document needs to include in order to really help? To me, it's like the AI variation of company goals, policies, and even core values, because I think the two blend somewhat into one another. What needs to be in that document?
What I came to realize was like, my biggest mission with all the work we're doing is this responsible AI application. There are many ways AI can go wrong. There are many ways it can be misused. And so I just want to do everything we can to ensure the best probability that it's used in a positive way by organizations. And so this was like a Friday morning. I was actually at the gym and I just said, I've been thinking about this for 3 years. I just have to write this thing. And I came back and I wrote it in a half hour and I sent it to my team and I said, hey, let me know if you have any feedback. I want to publish this thing this afternoon. So it was like years of thinking just like thrown into one thing. And it's honestly held up. Like I've gone back and read it a few times. Like, I don't know what else I would add. Like, I think I got most of my like years of processing this information pretty well synthesized. So I think that if you just go through point by point in the 12 items that I put in that manifesto, they'll give you a really good starting point. And you may not agree with the way I did it. That's fine. Change it for you. You may come up with 5 other things to include. Awesome. Do it. Go for it. But I think that this at least gives a starting point. And the big things for me are really just around, how are we envisioning AI? Is it an assistive tool to us as humans, or is it meant to, we're going to try and cut costs and get rid of some people? And so right away, you'll see that I am like, this has to be human-centered. Everything we do, and to your point about the human side, every decision we make, every piece of tech we buy, every class we create to educate people, every council we build, all has to be about how is AI amplifying humans and the human experience. And that is the foundation of the whole template I created, was like everything follows on from that concept, that we want to build intelligence and we want to make marketing and business more efficient and productive, but to benefit humans, not to replace them. And so everything I write about, everything I talk about, everything I do is following that overall mission.
Yeah, and I agree. I think whether you start from your starting point or any other starting point, I think the goal from my eyes of a document like this is 2 things. Is A, define basically the good and the bad. The things we want to do, like what do we aspire to do with this new kind of technology? And the other part of it is what we commit not to do. What is our red line? Because, and it was probably true for any other technology in the past. I think this one just amplifies everything by so many layers that it's very easy to do bad things, whether on purpose or by mistake, like the whole Samsung event of somebody using ChatGPT and dropping confidential information, and now everybody has access to it because they didn't understand, going back to the education part of it, that this is now part of ChatGPT and now everybody has access to it. So I love that part. I think it's very important that everybody in the organization are aware that these are guidelines. It's part of the company's operating system from that moment forward.
And again, you're going to have employees who have no idea what the company's policies are, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're allowed to do. And so there's all this uncertainty. And the faster we just get rid of that, the better this is going to be for everybody. But yeah, again, what your principles may be 4 items. Like it could be anything, but have something, I guess, is my big takeaway. Is like you have to get something in place as soon as possible and involve people in that process.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to the console, I think, and I also love what you did. I think because this becomes of a part, again, I love the concept of an operating system for a company. Mm-hmm. If this becomes a part of the operating system, you may want to ask, after the console reviews it and you have a first draft, send it to everybody. See if literally the last employee that was hired yesterday, does he or she has feedback for this? Because this may be a great idea by somebody that you didn't think about. But I agree with you that putting something out there sooner rather than later will A, accelerate your adoption of AI, and B, will prevent really bad things from happening, like what happened to Samsung.
Yeah.
Next thing was conduct an AI and impact exposure process. What do you actually do?
So I'm doing this right now for our own organization. So I'll tell you how I'm going to do it. So we're planning to hire 2 marketers, one to work on our education event side and one to work on the content media side. So the way we're going to do this so that we don't hire someone and then 6 months from now realize we didn't really need them. I don't want to be in a position where I remove people because of AI. So I have the luxury of I'm building the team from the ground up so I can craft this from the start. But the way I'm going to do this and the way I'm advising other people to do this is I would take their job description. So in this case, we're taking the job description of a future hire, but you could do this with the existing. And I would go line by line of the things that they do. So tactically, what are they doing? If they're a marketer, they're in charge of sending the email newsletter each week, writing and sending the emails newsletter. They're in charge of crafting social media shares based on the podcast. They're in charge of whatever it is they do. And I would go through each of those things and say, 12 months from now, how much of this is the AI doing? So again, this takes a little bit of a level of experience and expertise, understanding what AI is capable of to do this effectively. But you have to find a way to get to that state, either internally through outside advisors, to where you can do this because you owe it to your team to do this. It's the only fair way to be clear about this. And I would involve them in the process at some point, have them do this, because what you want to do is say, okay, there's a chance a year from now, this email marketer's job is going to be 50% AI. Like we can get this tool and they're going to be going from 130 hours a month of doing this thing to 65 hours. And that's just like straight up, the tech already exists. There's no reason to do this other than we don't want to take this person's 65 hours. So what I would do is look at it and say, okay, we're a pretty clear path to reduce this person's full-time equivalent down to the 65 hours. What can we redistribute that time to? What is on our wish list right now that we're not doing? Do we want to launch a second podcast? Do we want to launch a second email newsletter? Like, how can we redistribute this person's time and experience to the benefit of them and the company versus just saying, oh, cool, there's half of an FTE we can get rid of. That's what I think needs to happen. And I think the more in the open it happens, the more involved people can be in raising their hand and saying, you know what I'd love to do? Like what I see as an email marketer, I don't ever get the chance to do, but would be awesome if we could, would be this and this. And so, yeah, awesome. Like I don't really actually enjoy the segmentation part. I don't like looking at the performance reports. I don't like doing this. Oh, great. AI can do those things. Let's have the AI do those and let's have you shift over here. So I think you need to do that like you can think about it at an individual level. It's much easier to process. That's a more tangible thing. You can do it at a team level. So look at product marketing, let's look at email marketing, advertising, events, whatever it is. And then you can look globally. Like now you can look by a whole business function. And so I think individual managers, like managers, directors should do their teams, VPs, C-suite, they're looking whole business functions. And I would make that a real priority. I really don't think people realize how much knowledge work is going to be intelligent and automated in the next 12 to 18 months. And my unscientific estimation, this is based on my own assessment of our team and some other roles that I've looked at, is most knowledge work, you could see 20 to 30% gains in efficiency within the next 12 to 18 months. That means if someone works 150 hours a month, you could see 45 hours roughly shaved off of that work by intelligent automation. Now do that across an entire team. You're talking about thousands of hours potentially. Nobody's ready for that. Nobody knows what that means. Nobody knows what to do about that. If that sounds daunting to you, welcome to the club. People are all figuring this out at the same time. No one is even really talking about this. Nobody wants to talk about the impact on knowledge work, but it's real.
I agree. I want to touch on 2 points that are directly related to that. One is how critical it is to go back to the education and training part, right? Because your ability to do the process you just described has to come from a real understanding of what's possible right now and what might be possible in the next 6 to 12 months. Because otherwise, you'll be making very bad assumptions and making very wrong decisions based on those bad assumptions. So the education part has to come first. And if you don't have that person, hire a full-time person to do that, because that might be the most important person in the company or in defining the new trajectory of the company for the next foreseeable future. or hire a consultant, bring somebody from the outside who knows that stuff for a period of time to help you through that process. So that's number one as far as that thing. The other thing is, I think the scariest thing to me when I look at AI technology and where it's driving business and society, the bad part of it all comes from pure capitalism. But if you're saying, how can I maximize my profits tomorrow? A lot of people go, oh, I can do what I'm doing today and save, I'll go with your numbers, 30% of the cost. And I really love the approach you take, which, by the way, is the approach I really believe in. Let people thrive, involve the people, saying, listen, this is going to happen, whether you want it or not, in the next, you said 12 to 18 months. I think for companies who will do it quickly, it could be 3 to 6 weeks, especially if it's a smaller company and you can move fast. This is coming. I really want to keep you because I think you're the right fit for this team, for this company, and I want to support your personal growth. What other things you can do? Go research. Take 2 hours of your day every day in the next 2 weeks and look at AI tools and look at other stuff and tell me what you can do that you would enjoy doing that can help this company with AI tools that will complement the other stuff. And then instead of cutting cost, you're gaining new revenue opportunity and new efficiencies that you otherwise wouldn't have. So I really love these points that you brought up.
There's a parallel I just thought of. Back in 2008, I had a big insurance company come to me. This is at the very early days of social media and blogging and podcasting. Like all that was just rolling out in 2008, if people on the call remember those days. And they said, if we had $1 million, what would we do? If we could get $1 million increase in our marketing budget, and they didn't have a big marketing budget at the time. They had a very small marketing team, in fact. And they came to me and said, could you build us a plan of what we would do with $1 million? So I did. And I almost see it like in parallel now. It's like, if you go through and you do this assessment, you go, there is 10,000 hours a year that we think AI is going to do the work of our current team. I would do a plan of what could we do with 10,000 hours? So before I think, oh, cool, we can save 30% on our costs, I would redistribute the 10,000 hours, say, what could we possibly come up with that could dramatically improve our culture, our team, our organization with those 10,000 hours? And I think if that was the focus of everybody, is redistribution of hours to do more fulfilling things, more important things, then we're going to end up in a really good place. And I'm optimistic that there's going to be enough companies that take that approach, that this is a really real net positive for society. But it's not going to happen on its own. It really needs people that understand this and are pushing the same direction.
Yeah, I agree. And before we jump to the last point, which is an AI roadmap, something else, I'm teaching a course to a bunch of CMOs starting in 2 weeks. And the premise of the course is really more about strategy, less about the tactics on what tools are available. And I think a lot of businesses, and I think that's why it ties up to the point very well, is you have to reevaluate your company's strategy. Why? Because the environment you're going to be operating in, the needs of your clients, the capabilities your clients will have in-house are going to change dramatically. So the strategy you have today may not be relevant at all a year from now. And it's never happened in history before that something that dramatic happened that fast. So when you build an AI roadmap, and I'll let you, Paul, talk about this in a minute, one of the things you have to consider, in addition to all the internal things we talked about, is my company strategy even relevant a year from now, a year and a half from now? And if it's not, what do we need to change? How do we pivot our services or products in order to fit this new world that we're walking into? But now I will let you talk about what's in an AI roadmap. How do you structure it, and who needs to write it, and what's the execution process of it?
Yeah, just to build on what you were saying, I've actually had this conversation with some software companies recently where I was asked to talk to their product teams. And it's a really hard conversation because, just as an example, a software product team, their job is to do like incremental improvements that meet customer requirements or requests or popular items that the customer base has said they love. And you build within the confines of existing technology, and you're really busy and you don't have time to be like testing every new AI tool that comes out or keeping up with every AI announcement each day. Like I do it for a living and I have trouble keeping up with all of that. So I get that there's this like frustration within product developers because they could work on a feature for 3 months and some college kid will build it over the weekend and put it out for free. It's a real thing. This is happening to product teams daily right now. And so I think in that case, like, you really need this outside perspective, and maybe just outside the product team. I'm not even saying outside of the organization, but you need someone else who's looking at what we call like first principles thinking. Does this feature even need to exist? Like, we have 5 people working on this feature. If we think about where AI is taking us in 5 months, does this feature even, is it needed? And that's a hard thing. It goes back to education, goes back to understanding, to be able to look at things and say, I don't even know we should build it this way. And that's what I'm doing a lot of right now. Like with our institute, we're a media, event, and education company. I'm going to first principles on all 3 of those things. I don't want to build any of those the way companies have been built before. So how do we think about everything through the lens of AI? And let's just build a more intelligent organization from the ground up in those 3 core areas. So the way I think about it is, you start with a vision statement. Okay, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now, this is what our organization looks like. This is what we're going to become. Here's how we're going to infuse AI. It's really helpful to do it at a user story level or like an employee story level, where it's, okay, this person's job today looks like this in customer service and marketing and sales and product, whatever. In a year or 3 years from now, here's what their job could look like. So I would make it as like real as possible, kind of like the whole idea of personas and like market to one person. I would do that with your team. I would like really build that vision down to the individual persona level of what each person's job looks like. You need to have a sense of what's going on in the core areas of innovation, like language, vision, predictive capabilities. So once you understand what AI is capable of, where it's going, now you can better predict out what's going to happen. Then you get into like your own organization, and does anyone on the team know this stuff? Do we have anything to build on top of? Have we done some pilot projects already that maybe we're not even aware of? So you take stock of what's going on, what your current state of AI awareness and capability is, your staff, your talent, your tech. Then you go into we always talk about use cases and problem based, like problems that we can solve. So use cases are things like, we know an AI writing tool would help. We're spending 500 hours a month writing. Like, we don't need to spend 3 months to figure out an AI writing tool is a good starting point. So let's have a team go find an AI writing tool. And now you can start doing these use cases, and maybe it's just a few, but you're stacking up these use cases while you're working on the bigger problems like churn, audience growth, revenue acceleration, sales pipeline velocity, whatever those bigger problems are. That's the direct relevant about people. They're trying to solve these bigger business problems with a smarter approach. And so I just see the roadmap as like, in a simple way, this is the future state. We are going to look like this 3 years from now. Tech's obviously going to keep evolving, so none of us can predict exactly what it's going to look like. But this is what we're going to do. This is our mission around this. Like, we are committed to becoming this. Here's our responsible AI principles. And now we're going to start doing 3 pilot projects per business function per quarter. We're going to see them through. We're going to see if they work. And simultaneously, we're going to start doing 1 big problem statement per quarter per function. And so that's what the roadmap lays out, is what are the resources? What's the team availability? What tech are we going to need? And then who's going to do this? And to your point, who's going to do this? I have no idea. Like, you and I have talked about this before. Like, the problem is, if you buy into all this, and hopefully it's makes sense, and elements of this are at least, that we got to do that. What I don't know how to tell you to do is who's going to do it, because the reality is there's so few people in the world right now that actually understand this stuff at a deep level, and also are business people. So there's a lot of AI people. There's tens of thousands of AI researchers and machine learning engineers. They're likely not the people that are doing this. They're technical people. They're building things and they're solving problems they're given. They are not the strategist, the visionary. It's a hard problem. If you can find a consultant who knows this stuff, don't let them go. Or if you have someone internally who can do this stuff, build around them, because these are going to be really hard people to find for the next couple of years. There just aren't very many of them.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there was a totally unnecessary craze about the whole idea of prompt engineers. And this is not going to be a thing, but people who understand AI and business and strategy are very hard to find, especially at the higher levels, like people who can help navigate a corporate into that direction. There's not enough of these on the planet to solve the amount of issues we're going to have.
Great strategists are hard to find. Like in the 16 years I ran my agency, it was the hardest thing I had to do was hire for people that I thought had a high ceiling as a strategist, and then have the patience to get them there. Because you don't come out of college as a strategist. I'm sorry. Like, it takes a mix of experience, of failure. Like, you got to go through some stuff to become a great strategist, and you got to see some things. So we need great strategists who also happen to be extremely knowledgeable about AI and what it's capable of. It's a very hard hire.
I agree. I want to start opening this to questions. There was already a few questions. I want to relate to something that relates to something that Paul Cheney wrote in the chat. And he said, I'm just a solopreneur. This is way bigger than my problems. I think the smaller the company, the bigger the opportunity and the lower the risk is right now. So this is going to really level the playing field, good or bad, right? If you're small, you'll be able to move a lot faster and do incredible things because you have lower risk and lower overhead and a lot faster to change. And bigger companies, especially regulated industries, will not be able to react as quickly. And just to give a small example, and I don't know, I'm sure, Paul, you've seen it, but just to the crowd, there's a guy, he's a computer developer. I think he's from Pakistan, but if I'm butchering it, then please excuse me. And his job was his niche was to develop applications for Shopify. And he would send these outbound emails to companies and say, hey, I'm a Shopify developer. I've done 100 of these things in the past. Here's a few. And he would get an open rate of 0.01%. And every now and then somebody would actually hire him. And he went and scraped 100,000 Shopify stores. And he gave the data of what they sell, what they promote, how they write their stuff, who are their clients, what frequency, all the data he had. He gave it to ChatGPT and said, what app would you develop for this business on the individual level, on a one business level? And then he had ChatGPT draft an email to that company and send an email. So he developed an application for himself that does these three things. Go research this company, define the app that will help them the most, send them an email. He sent 3,000 of those in the beginning, and he got a stupid amount of replies of companies saying, this is awesome, this is the best idea ever, we want to hire you. The crazy thing is he didn't know what he was offering because ChatGPT made it all up. The reason I'm telling you all that story is because this is what's possible today. And an individual person can do these kind of things. But if you go to the next level over, which maybe is not 100% possible now, but would be possible very soon, ChatGPT can write those applications. So now a company of one can be a machine of extensions for HubSpot or Salesforce or, again, Shopify plugins or whatever the case may be. One person, because you just be managing this AI machine that will do all these things. So if you're not bound by the thinking of what was possible so far and just, I just want to replace writing with AI writing, the world changes dramatically. So I would really want to go to questions. And Kai had a question. Kai is saying, in some ways, is ChatGPT a distraction from longer-term enterprise solutions that could drive efficiency sooner in more secure environments?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do often lead off my talks with ChatGPT is a blessing and a curse. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So it was a blessing because everyone woke up and realized they needed to care about AI. It was a curse because they thought they solved ChatGPT, they solved AI. So anybody who's followed AI at all knows, listen, the AI was envisioned in the 1940s and 50s. This isn't new technology, this idea that machines could have human-like capabilities. It just took way longer than anybody thought for it to become a reality. And so there's hundreds or thousands of use cases for AI well beyond AI writing tools and image generation. And that's, I think, where we need to get to is this better understanding of what it actually is, what it enables to happen. And then from there, you can get organizations that are way better at figuring out and optimizing for specific use cases that are going to have the greatest impact on revenue growth or cost reduction, are the two main grand goals people would have for using AI.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it could be a very big distraction to my short answer to this, because it's the hype and it's the thing, and there might be bigger problems within your business that you got to solve. So don't make this be the kind of like the butterfly effect or whatever. Oh, look at this, and the shiny object kind of thing. It's something you got to deal with, but it doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be this, but it should be part of the things you're looking at.
It's just, I would look at more of generative AI, text generation, and all the other things it's capable of: summarization, ideation, transcription. Every company does that across every business function. Like, that's why I think it's so obvious that what ChatGPT made apparent is that this is going to be so widespread, its use and its benefits, that we're still figuring it out, honestly, like developing these understandings of its as a strategy assistant. Like I've talked about that, I think, on the podcast. Like I just don't think people have a clue how good it is at strategy. Like it is, I've used it for 4 weeks at that, and I'm still blown, like my mind is blown when I do it. So I think once people start realizing the true capabilities of these things, it's just going to be such a massive shift in the way work is done. And again, not even though we're going to lose a bunch of jobs, I'm just saying, like, fundamentally, the way you do your work. I'll give an example that I think is super tangible. I have a buddy who's a dentist, and he had reached out to me. He was talking about like the impact of inflation on costs and the inability to raise pricing because you're locked by insurance. And so I was like, yeah, man, that's a problem. I don't really know dental businesses too well. So I went to GPT-4 and I just laid it out. And I was like, yeah, I'm a dentist. I'm locked in my pricing. Inflation's really cost me. Like, what are 10 ways I can drive efficiency in the business to maintain profit margins? And it came back with 10 insanely good ideas. Sent them to my buddy, and he's like, dude, like 3 of these are legit ideas. I'm going to go check into this. I was like, there you go. I'll charge you for the minute of time it took me to put it into GPT for you. But here's the thing. He is an expert in dental practices. So I look at that thing and I'm like, I have no idea if these are even relevant. I don't know insurance. I don't know any of this stuff. He's the expert in being a dentist, though. So as a strategy assistant, he can take something and do something with that where I can't. And that's where I think, like, designing, writing, however you're going to use these tools, if you're the expert in your domain and you know your stuff, you're going to get way more value out of them than the average person. And you're going to be able to just do more work. So I was a consultant for dental practices. Like, I could take on 20 clients now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One thing on what you just said, like the subtext of this, and we started with that, and then we'll go to one last question and then I'll let you go. I know it's been a long week for you, but the charging by the hour concept for, I don't care if you're a lawyer, a consultant, whatever you're charging, you're done. You're not done in your business, but you got to find a different business model, because people will know that you can get this level of responses, results, documents, whatever the case may be, in seconds or minutes instead of days and weeks. So you won't be able to charge $400 of a paralegal for something when people know this actually generates it in 35 seconds. So I'm not paying you for 400 hours. So one of the big, huge issues that the different kind of consulting services out there is the whole billable hours business model is going to have a very serious issue that it's going to be facing. The next question I want to ask is a question from Blake. Any thoughts on relying on cloud services versus investing in-house computing capacity for AI workload?
I have no idea how to do the in-house one. The problem right now, so if anybody's not familiar, how this stuff works, the generative AI stuff requires a massive amount of computing power. And the computing power largely comes from AWS, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud. And the infrastructure that powers those largely comes from NVIDIA. So the GPUs, chips that power it, and then Google has their TPUs. But there is a scarcity for those things. I know people within Google who can't get compute resources. So the challenge is, to do this stuff at scale, you need access to cloud computing and access to the GPUs. So if people within Microsoft and Google can't get access to their own cloud compute, it's really hard to think that other enterprises are going to be able to build up their own infrastructures to do this. If you can, great, but I don't know how long it takes to even get GPUs from NVIDIA right now. Like they may have a backlog of orders. So it seems as though it's a cloud solution you're going to build in these clouds. And what I've known recently is, like, Google Cloud is giving significant credits to startups to do generative AI in their cloud. So I think you're going to have a battle between Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud, to try and win customers over by giving, and I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in credits. If you're a big enough organization, probably millions, because they're trying to win you and lock you into their cloud for the next 10 years. So it's going to be a really fascinating time, but I think for most organizations, you're relying on a cloud provider, maybe a few of them. I don't know.
I agree strongly. I think the only fear with the whole cloud thing is, where's my data? Do I own it? Who has access to it?
Yeah.
And I think all three organizations, which I agree with you 100%, they own the solution. Nobody else can develop the same scale of stuff. Already said that you can have a confined environment that is absolutely yours, that you can drop your data into it and that you can train your data on it and you can run it within that confined environment that doesn't leak anywhere else. Most of these organizations already own your data anyway. Like you're probably running all your data on one of those three giants. And so your data is there. Just training your models on that, running your AI stuff on top of it is just another layer of services they already provide today. And like Paul said, it may be cheaper for you to actually start using their AI services than just using what you're using today.
Certainly faster to get up and running and get to value. But yeah, I think again, it goes to each organization. Like we're in a highly regulated industry with lots of governance over how you use data and maybe have personal information data. Like it's a different ball game, obviously, but you're used to that. Everything has barriers to it if you're in that kind of industry.
Paul, I can't thank you enough. I think you and I can probably do this for the next 2 or 3 hours.
No doubt.
But this was really fascinating, really well thought of. And again, you've been doing this for so long. I really appreciate you taking the time. I really appreciate you sharing all of this. Now, not just here on the podcast, but on your website, on the courses that you're doing for free, on the training you're doing regularly. If people want more of you, what's the best way to follow you, connect with you, work with you, and so on?
Everything is housed at marketingaiinstitute.com. The book, the courses, the events, that's the blog. The podcast, as you mentioned, is that the listenership's been exploding, which is awesome. We love hearing from people listening to the podcast. And then me personally is LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active from a social perspective. And I try and share thought once or twice a day, just put up kind of some observations about what's going on. So that's where I'm most active for sure. And I appreciate you having me. It's a great conversation. I love having conversations with people who are also really deep into this and think deeply about it. I think it makes for wonderful conversations and helps. Hopefully people are trying to figure this stuff out to start develop their own points of view, because my point of view and your point of view isn't what you listening should take, but synthesize it all and figure this out for yourself. And that's how we'll get ahead as an industry.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the number one thing that can help businesses survive this and society go through this in the least painful way is awareness and conversation. So I really want to thank you. Have an amazing weekend.
Thank you, everyone.